Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's good to be back after a little time away. I've been around, but back up here, it seems like nothing has changed, and yet everything has changed. And that's one of the neat things about institutions like religious communities. They can hold true through time, and they can change with the times or be the change of the times. And we've got a good blend of all of it here. It's good to be back. So long story short, since I was last up here several years ago, I now have a wonderful wife and 2 kids, one of whom I think many of you got to know has the same energy as Felix. He was up and down the ramps and through the aisles a couple weeks ago during Together Time. And they're home today recovering from a stomach bug, so hopefully they're watching. Hi. My wife recently joined a community choir, and they did a show of various Disney pieces, which got our kids really excited about some classic Disney movie songs and some of the more contemporary ones. They really loved the music from Encanto, which has been on repeat for a few months now. It's a great movie. It's set in Colombia about a family where each member has a magical gift or superpower, except the protagonist, Mirabel, who is just normal. Her sisters, one who is super strong and the other who turns everything into flowers, are both doing everything they can to keep the town running smoothly and beautifully under the watchful eye of the benevolent matriarch grandmother. Mirabel, in a quest to find the truth of the mysterious disappearance of the prophetic uncle that no one is supposed to talk about, connects with her sisters and helps them discover their own inner longings to not be perfect all the time. However, the house crashes down when the magic dies, and Mirabel then helps the grandmother see that her quest for maintaining the perfect family was unsustainable and actually kind of harmful. Then they rebuild, and it's happily ever after. Uncle rejoins the family, sisters get to relax and express their true selves, and grandmother realizes that even without a magical gift, Mirabel was the one who could see past the magic and into the humanity to pull them all together with love. Disney. We are surrounded by the concepts and the expectations of perfection. Our grocery stores are a great example. All the produce and the meat must look perfect. They're coated and dyed and painted and preserved, and as soon as the bananas are a certain shade of near-ripe yellow, they're thrown to the dumpster so the new ones can come in. As a former dumpster diver, my friends and I lived high on the hog from the waste from grocery stores with food that was totally fine, just so they could keep up museum-like quality appearances inside. Our HOAs keep our yards looking perfect. The feral natural beauty of the desert is bulldozed over and replaced with plants that are pre-approved and trimmed and sculpted. I'm waiting for the HOA to start mandating topiary saguaros and espaliered ocotillos on the wall. Social media, of course. Social media allows us to curate our lives to display only our best selves, an image of our best selves to the world. And even if we share the hard things, it's usually carefully crafted. The influencers raise expectations of living the dream, whatever that is, 24/7. The filters allow us to take perfectly enhanced photos, and we can alter our own images to clean up our skin and modify our body shape, even slightly, to be just a little more perfect. We look to Pinterest on how to have a picture-perfect wedding, perfect vacation, a perfect plate of pasta. Who's that foodie guy that recently invented the perfect pasta shape? What's that guy's name? I follow him on Instagram too. Yeah. There's apps with questionnaires that promise to match us with a perfect partner or perfect job or find your perfect home. And now, with the development of artificial intelligence, which is just really a mirror of our own collective society and yearnings, when it's prompted to make images, it shows us perfectly looking young people, skinny, able-bodied, nice teeth, nice hair, nice clothes, usually white, and maybe just an awkward shadow or smudge that gives it away. But it's only a matter of time before the fakes will be undetectable. This call for perfection is both external and it's internal inside ourselves. In our spiritual, our social, mental, psychological world, we're deluged with calls for betterment and perfection. I was in a bookstore the other day, one of the few left, and glancing at the titles in the spiritual section, just be your best self, raise your vibration level, be more grounded and calm and compassionate, and you'll be happier and mindful. I didn't even go to the self-help section. I didn't want to know. Buddhism, as a philosophy and a worldview, seems to have this calling built in with a promise of nirvana, of enlightenment if you try hard enough. But let's look at that a little more carefully. One of the key features of Buddhism is practice. Usually practice refers to meditation of some form. So doing your practice is being committed to doing meditation. I like the concept of practice. It's a word used in many contexts where we always try to get better at something. Sports practice comes to mind. Even in medicine and law, that word is used. I think it's humbling to say, this is my medical practice, or I'm practicing law. Of course, if you need a surgeon for something, maybe you don't want her to be practicing. But I think of it as a commitment to lifelong learning of a skill, always developing your competency. In sports, athletes practice through their entire careers. For our Diamondback sports fan, does May 18th, 2024 ring a bell for anyone? When Randy Johnson, at the age of 40, pitched a perfect game against the Braves. So maybe, like the saying goes, practice does make perfect. And sure, in that context, we can celebrate the accomplishment of something like pitching a perfect game. We can relish in the achievement and the witness of it and cheer on the next pitcher who might pull it off. But in my life, like in Louie's life, like all of our lives, I've got 2 kids. We're coming out of COVID. I've got termites in the kitchen. I've got stomach viruses, a very old air conditioner and water heater, and not enough sleep, enough bills. Global and political chaos and violence and guns and climate change and friends struggling with their lives too. You know, all the things. I don't think perfect is what I'm aiming for. Yes, I was an A student in high school and through most of college and grad school, but as they say, and I learned to try to embrace this, C's still get degrees. It takes work to tone down our expectations, given the social pressures that surround us. Do you all remember the sensation of Marie Kondo, the queen of decluttering your home in order to have a happier life? She believed that a tidy living environment led to more inner peace. Guess what? Marie now has kids. In an interview after her second child was born, she said, "Just after my first daughter was born, I felt unable to forgive myself for not being able to manage my life as I had before. But with time, I eased up on myself. Then, after I gave birth to my second daughter, I let go of my need for perfection altogether." She now has 3 kids. So when I came into Buddhism, I was eager to really get into this practice, the practice of it. My Sangha, my community, met weekly in a yoga studio, and we did our meditation, and we did our chants. We listened to our teacher give talks. And some of us, overachievers, committed to a daily practice and prostrations, meditation, journaling. I was going through a breakup at the time, so I really clung to this new practice as the way to achieve all those things that the bookstore was promising. Heal myself, be more grounded, have more insight into my own issues, be a better person, and not make any more mistakes. I wanted to fix my broken and flawed self. Never mind that Buddhism teaches that there is no self. But then I had this thought that came to my mind during a meditation at a weekend mini retreat. Maybe I was too broken for meditation. All the images of meditating, you see people sitting calm on a cushion, they seem like they already had their lives together. I got tears in my eyes. I started crying to myself during meditation, a definite no-no for magazine cover images of retreats. But I realized I just had to accept myself for who I was right now, today. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be the better future me, not the current messy me. I would go on with this insight into my own desire and perception and start loosening up on myself and just come to meditation practice however I felt that day or that hour. I've had angry meditations. I've had sad meditations. I've had very distracted meditations and a few calm ones. But if I'm honest, those are rare. Sharon Salzberg, a meditation teacher I follow, she talks about perfectionism as a hindrance. I love that word, a hindrance, holds you back. She says, this is why clinging to our ideas of perfection isolates us from life and is a barrier for real love for ourselves. Perfection is a brittle state that generates a lot of anxiety because achieving and maintaining unwavering standards, whether they're internal or external, means that we're always feeling like we're under threat. We become focused on only avoiding failure. And love for the self cannot be a refuge because it has become too conditional, too dependent on performance. As Oscar Wilde said in his play An Ideal Husband, it is not the perfect but the imperfect who have need of love. And that means every last one of us. So I got to thinking about how mindfulness practices are so often marketed as this path to individual betterment. Practice makes perfect. Now we can tease that out, and most teachers will be quick to say that self-acceptance is the goal of practice, and if you achieve that, then you will indeed feel better about yourself. But I feel like the language, the book titles, the retreat headlines, they're misleading. I think you've got to just come to it and directly say it out loud. Practice makes imperfect. I really enjoyed Reverend Sky's sermon several weeks back about the covenant here, and they wrote on top of the old UUC covenant that they had a copy of, and their version explicitly acknowledged our imperfection as a community, and that our commitment was not to make it perfect, but just to come back again and again in the imperfectness of it. They wrote, we try, and we fail, and we grow, and we rest, and we try again. That sounds pretty accurate and realistic to me. And to accomplish that, we have tools of accountability, forgiveness, grace, and apologies. We have the tool of breath that's always with us. These tools we can use to live our imperfect lives together, and it's all summed up in the concept that we use, embrace in our philosophy of right relationship. It should just be right, messy relationship. I thought about how the language of mindfulness practice can be shifted to point towards remaining imperfect rather than promoting the expectation of self-improvement and perfection. I currently lead a small meditation group that meets in South Phoenix on Central Avenue, where the light rail construction has been going on. It's great because it's noisy. We learn to sit with the sound of cars and buses driving over big metal plates across the road, clanking, construction equipment, people knocking on the door in the middle of our sits, the loud air conditioning coming on and off. I started off thinking that this would be a terrible place to have meditation, but it was free. And now I think it's the perfect place. You can laugh at that, it's not. I thought you caught me, didn't you? As a chaplain at the hospital and hospice, I'm around a lot of grief. There's a bit of debate in our field about, where are they? Here we go. About tissues. For many of us, when we see someone starting to cry, we go for the tissues, the paper towels, the napkins, anything we can get to hand to that person. Sometimes that search becomes frantic, and you lose connection with the person who's grieving. I'm in the no-tissue camp. I let people cry, tears and boogers and all, and they can wipe it on their sleeve, let it soak into their laps. Grief is supposed to be messy and real. When you start handing someone tissues, you're kind of saying, it's okay to cry, but keep it clean. Don't mess up your makeup or clothes. I want to give you the space to let it all out, however it comes, and without interruption. And I'll even offer a hug afterwards. With all those boogers and tears, I'm not scared. And then when it's all cried out and done, yeah, let's go find a tissue. It took me a lot of practice to get to that point. There's a lot of uncomfortableness watching people grieve and not being able to do something to clean it up. I'm okay with it now. I have a gentleman right now on my hospice service who has really advanced dementia. He's no longer able to comprehend instructions to walk or sit or how to use utensils to eat. He's just kind of in his own space. His wife has had a very hard time accepting his decline and often yells at him or grabs his arm to force him to move. She wanted to take him to the dentist to get his dentures refitted, which would be 2 trips. I anticipated this was going to be very stressful, so I offered to go along with them. I used my practice. I mentally prepared for a tough day. I practiced for the imperfect, and it was a doozy. She was already yelling at the van driver on the phone before he arrived. He was just confused where the entrance to the building was, but he was also a little late. I had tried to lower her expectation beforehand and said, the van's going to be late, and that just upset her even more. She continued to insult the driver the whole way to the dentist. He almost stopped and kicked her out, which actually probably would have been appropriate. And I just did my best to keep de-escalating and redirecting. I kept my demeanor, I would say 90% of the time, and eventually I had a mild snap with her, and I forgave myself for that. Through all this, the husband was fine, just staring out the windows, enjoying the ride. The dentist part went smoothly, and then we had a different driver to go back, and he said I couldn't go because there was only 2 people on the reservation, on the itinerary, and he could get fired if there was a 3rd person. Eventually, he, at risk to his job, let me sit in the front seat. Then we hit a train, which made me late. Oh, it was a wild day. It takes a lot of practice to be in situations like that, to come from a place of compassion for the wife, for the drivers, for the patient, for myself. Could I have done better, been even more grounded and wise that day? Yep. But I was just me that day, and that was what I could do, and it turned out fine. He got the new dentures, which are now loose again, and the journey goes on, perfectly imperfect. I love that our Sunday mornings are not super rigid. The kids are running around, sometimes the technology fails, sometimes the candle doesn't light, sometimes the cell phone rings, and it's okay. It's just about being together. We are practicing being ourselves our entire lives. Some of us may just practice one version of ourselves. Some of us try out a few. We might practice expressing a new gender identity expression. We're practicing with pronouns and language in creative ways. We're practicing what it means to shed centuries of white supremacy and sexism and ableism. Some of us practice being allies, then we decided that that wasn't really the right concept. We practice being woke, and now I think that's retired too. We're practicing accountability, we're practicing discomfort and curiosity. And if it all goes right, we'll just keep practicing all these things until the day that we die, and teach our kids how to practice too. Not to arrive anywhere, not to become the best versions of ourselves or be perfect, or to create utopian societies or congregations, just to be here now, in our present moment, however that looks. We can aim for more justice and equity in the world, but we'll always be practicing that too. And to all our folks that we're celebrating anniversaries today and relationships, love requires a lot of practice. A lot. So when your friends ask you what you're doing on Sunday morning, you can say, I'm going to church, or worship, or congregation, or whatever imperfect word we're trying to use to describe this. Or you can also say, I'm going to practice. May it be imperfectly so.